Behind every successful endeavor in life is a relationship built on trust. Welcome to The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. A podcast focused on helping you nurture healthy relationships. Join thought leader and world-renowned expert on relationship and empowerment coaching, Dr. Patty Ann, and her special guests every week for insightful and meaningful conversations filled with great takeaways that will help you build healthier business partnerships and happier romantic relationships. Are you ready to restore trust and enrich the significant relationships in your life? The Trust Doctor, Dr. Patty Ann, is in.
Welcome to today's podcast episode of The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. And I have an incredible guest. I've had nobody like this man on this podcast before. So I know how much you are going to enjoy this. So make sure that you like, share, comment, and subscribe to the podcast. So let me just tell you a little bit about our next guest. He is an energy coach and a healer extraordinaire. Now, in the past, I would have heard that and said, woo, 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 woo. But let me tell you, this man is the real deal. And when you get referred to somebody from Bab Smith and Dan Sullivan, you listen and you go. So without any further ado, buckle up, because Kim White is going to take us for a ride. Welcome, Kim, and thank you so much for agreeing to be on this podcast.
Thanks, Patty. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
So excited, so excited. So I don't want to say that I had a session with you because I don't want people to think, oh, see, clearly this doesn't work because she's still a lunatic. But it was actually phenomenal. But let's talk about how you got to where you are via, is it Perth, Australia?
Yeah, that's where I'm from. Perth, Australia. Yeah.
So please take us on your journey because it is fascinating.
Well, I guess it started when I was a little kid, and I noticed that I would go into houses or meet people and I'd react. Sometimes I'd be like, you couldn't shut me up, and other times you couldn't get a word out of me. And my parents were concerned, like, what's wrong with him? Why is he so different in so many different environments? And that's how it started. I started to question, well, is something wrong with me? You know, of course there wasn't, but I didn't know then. I was just sensitive. I could feel things and I didn't know what it meant. And of course, growing up in Australia, if you're sensitive, you're a wuss, you're a weak, guys aren't sensitive. I'm sure it's the same in the States.
Unfortunately, yes, but I do think it's changing, but not fast.
It's getting better. It is getting.
Yeah.
So that's where it started. And I just focused all my attention onto my school. So I'd make sure I get good grades. So I was like really insulating myself into my head and becoming this brain. I love to read. So I just escape all the time away from these other energies.
The executive functioning, logic, reasoning, forget the emotions as if we can do that. Go ahead.
So that's where it started. And then I had this passion started when I was about 8 years old about architecture. So I started to study and look at books and explore houses in the neighborhood, and I climbed through construction sites, and it just really fascinated me. So I was like, okay, this is where I want to go. And so my whole schooling led in this direction towards being an architect. And I went to college for a couple of years studying architecture, and then my life took a turn. And it started I was a runner since I was little because it was a good sport for me. My parents put me into athletics to try and get my physical body.
Hang on, I have to ask you this question.
Yeah.
What did you think you might have been running away from?
From the feelings, 100%. Okay. And also also running away from being rejected, because as a runner, you're independent. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're part of a team, I was always the last to be picked for teams. I was the little guy. So it's like, oh, okay, I'll take him. You know, it's like that. So that's what I was running away from. But I actually developed a skill with my running, and I started to get really good. And the big thing, which you'll understand this, it all changed when I got a coach. I went from eighth in my state to sixth in the nation in like 9 weeks. It was phenomenal because I had a coach. And like, that's why I always say everyone needs a coach. You know, everyone needs to, if you want to grow in an area, you just get a coach. So that was a big breakthrough. Anyway, I moved to the,
what stage of life were you at when you got the coach? How old were you? Was it high school,
I was
college?
18, 19. Yeah.
So
early. Yeah. College.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then because my running improved, I deferred my studies and went to the national training camp in Australia for a couple of years to see if I could improve my running, see how far I could go.
Were you trying to go to the Olympics?
Yes.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I got sidetracked by a little partying on the way. So
never happened.
No. So I was a real party animal back in those days. And so what I did was I got an opportunity to go to America on a running team. And so I said, 2 weeks, I can do it. So I recommitted back to my running, went there, and that was a 2-week tour that lasted 6 years because I got offered so many scholarships when I was there that I thought, hey, why don't I stay? This is great. So that was reigniting my Olympic dream.
Yeah,
so
where in the States did you come? Was it Arizona?
I started in California, and then I transferred to Arizona, northern Arizona in Flagstaff, up in the mountains.
Okay.
And I knew when I arrived there on my recruiting trip, I just knew this is it. It was everything in me said, this is where you need to be. It was so clear, and I'd never heard of Flagstaff before. and it was probably one of my best negotiations I've ever had in my life, was negotiating for that scholarship. And,
so tell us about it. Tell us about it. Tell us about the negotiation.
They couldn't give me a full ride because they didn't have enough budget, whatever.
Okay.
And I'd run out of money. I was only coming to America for 2 weeks, and suddenly I'm still here, right? So I was like, I need a full ride. So I negotiated where I had to get a certain grade point average and a certain amount of points at the conference meets that they would give me a full ride the next semester.
Performance-based.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course, I went 4.0. You know, the coach halfway through the season says, "Don't worry, you got it. Full ride, no problem."
Great.
So that was what I did. And I loved it. But then what happened was, a week before the Olympic trials, I had an injury that was like career ending. And it was like, oh my God, I strained my Achilles tendon. So my Olympic dream was...
Is that from overtraining, Kim? Was this strain from overtraining, or you don't know?
I do know, but I can share it later.
Okay, I don't want to blow up
just
your
remind me,
okay?
Because it's really important. So what I did was I started searching. Why did I get injured? And it took me to, I was already in the mind-body connection. I was already visualizing, meditating, everything before then. I'd been spiritual as a child, but I'd sort of, through the party years, I'd lost that connection with God, and I started to get it back a little. And so I started searching, and I studied kinesiology, and I was finding all these limiting beliefs that I had. And the reason the injury was, if I was running on my own, I would qualify for the Olympics. I'd do really well. It was like a no-brainer. I was second in the world at one stage for the indoor mile. And then it was like, but as soon as I got in a race where the other competitors were international, my muscles contracted and I couldn't get a full stride length. So I was running slower. And it would just drive me crazy. So that's how the injury came, because my muscle contraction through the environmental conditions affected me. And I'd also know
that was it. How did you come to realize? Like I could feel it. Well, I see people can follow the kinesiology, but how did you how did you know it was the connection to? Probably the wrong word, but the overwhelm or the intimidation of the international athletes. How did you make that connection?
So that came later with the kinesiology, because when I retired from my running and I was studying kinesiology and the science of body movement and how it relates to our emotions, a year later, I was flicking on the TV and I saw the world championships, and all the guys I used to beat were running. And I was like, this catharsis moment. Like, I didn't have any problem with the injury, but I lost it a year later. It just like, blah, it all came out of me. So it was like, what is this? Okay, I'm going to reignite my passion for my running and find a way to get back. And I happened to be living in Santa Monica at the time, in Los Angeles, and the best team in the world was Santa Monica Track Club. So I called up and I did all this, and I did this for 2 weeks. I was constantly calling, sending messages. The coach knew me from the past. I couldn't connect. I was like, there's something in the way with this, gaining this relationship with the team. So what I did was I started doing some kinesiology on myself, and this is where I found out where the injury came. I discovered there was a sabotage from my great-great-grandfather. When he came, he brought his family from Ireland to Australia. It had
wait, Kim, weren't those the criminals that they threw out that went to Australia back then? I'm just teasing you.
Yeah. No, that's actually a status item in Australia now, but back then it wasn't. So when he brought his family, the trauma and the stress was locked in the body, and it got passed down to his children and my grandfather and my father, and finally me.
Just the normal trauma and stress of clearly,
moving everything, immigrating to another country with a whole family. There was about 8 of them that moved.
Wow.
So that was like a total, like, wow, that's what's caused me to contract my muscles. Like, this is amazing. So of course it's my passion about improving human performance. This is like a major game changer, right? Within 2 hours, Patty, I was on the boulevard in Santa Monica, down having some dinner. The coach walks past the restaurant. I jumped over the fence of the hedge because I was sitting outside.
I'm a hurdler.
Yeah, grabbed him and I said, I've been trying to call you for weeks. What's going? He never got any message. He never got anything, any communication. The funny thing was, he only goes down that street once or twice a year. It was like just the miracle of the connection. So what I found out, because I changed the belief systems in my body, it changed my whole reality. It changed my whole environment, changed my whole ability to manifest. So, and I found out all the people that I spoke to try to connect with the coach were also part of the sabotage. I created it with my own consciousness. So that's when I realized, hey, I've got to help people.
What do you mean by they were part of the sabotage? What do you mean by that? I mean, I know what sabotage means.
When you want to get healthy, and I saw this with my father, he wanted to get healthy. He went to all the wrong doctors. The doctors that wanted to keep him sick, or you want to improve this business, so you employ this person to help you, and suddenly they're the wrong person because you're matching your belief systems. Okay. You like attracts like.
Consciously, you think you want to improve your business, you think you want to improve your health, but unconsciously, that's not really what you believe. So there's
exactly. And when I was in the early days, I was working with a lot of, this is back in the early days of AIDS, and in West LA, I was working with a lot of the clients that were suffering with HIV and dying. And we do these reversal of these belief systems from wanting to be sick to wanting to be healthy in their body. Of course, their mind wanted to be healthy. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And as soon as we shifted the emotional blockages in their body, their T cell count went up and they got healthy. It was phenomenal. Wow. So what the drugs weren't doing, because the body is really controlling everything, like how our consciousness is controlling everything. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. So that's how it started. And then I just said, okay, I'll try this for a year. I'll do this kinesiology for a year and let's see where it goes. All right. And I was actually going to go to grad school. That was my plan. I never went back. It's been 29 years now that I've been doing this, and I just love it. I love helping people. I love people breaking through blockages that are holding them back. And I'll say one of the earliest clients I had was this lady, and I did the session. I just had such passion for helping people. I did the session, did the transformation for her. And afterwards, she looked at me and she said, you know what? I just spent 10 years in therapy and you just got rid of my problem in 1 hour. And I was like, I was young and naive then. I said, 10 years, why would anyone spend 10 years in therapy on an issue, right? I didn't know then, but now it's like, and so I've said, that's it. I want to make sure people get rid of the problem in 10 minutes. That was my Olympic goal, right? To get there. And now I've done it. It took me 20 years, but I got to 10 minutes. And so I've been working on that. If someone has a particular blockage, I want it out of them in 10 minutes.
Right.
Because I want them to get out and live life and enjoy life and create all the abundance they deserve. So that's the story.
So you said earlier that the body controls everything. And I think did you mean the body controls the mind? But either way, talk a little bit about, like, I'm going to say this, it might not be, I'm sure it's not completely accurate, but it's only since the AMA, the American Medical Association, has been around, not even 100 years, where cultures would talk mind and body, right? Prior to that, Eastern wisdom, shall we say, we knew there was that mind-body connection, right? And we know the spinal cord, the tip of the spinal cord is attached to the base of the brain, right? So it's what is that dynamic, right? Because my understanding is it's not which came first, the chicken or the egg, they're fluid, it's both. But is there a driver, a first? Is there an emotion that's first that creates the behavior?
Well, the emotion can lock something into your body. Just like when you're looking over a cliff, if you've got fear of height, your body contracts, like that. And so it locks in your body. The shock locks into your system because your system is energy, it's flowing. And if you suddenly stop it, then it's going to have an impact on your psychology and on your actions, everything. So the body holds it's like the subconscious holding all the memories compacted into one. So the body cells hold it. Even though your conscious mind wants something, if you're not getting it, you got to look at, hey, am I blocking this somehow? Is my unconscious blocking this? And how can I improve that or change that to unblock it to go where I want to go? So the body is holding that. So I'd say the body is holding more than the mind. The conscious mind is what we want, but also the conscious mind is influenced by everything around us. How many times have you been hearing a song in your head and then you turn on the radio and it's right playing? Because the energy's in the air, right? The song is playing on the radio waves.
So with that example, what would you say to someone that said, how could that be the case if the person playing the disc jockey didn't know till right before they put the music on that they were going to play that? What would your response to that be?
No, I would say that you're tuning in with the vibes that are already playing. It's already playing. It's playing in the air and then you turn it on.
Got it.
A little bit different to intuition. Like you get an intuition, like someone's thinking about you and then they call. You think about someone.
So let's talk about intuition, right? Because I know that's one of your sweet spots. So take us down the intuition.
Intuition. Okay. Yeah. So intuition is that gut instinct, that immediate knowing more than thinking. And the way I describe intuition is like we spend all our time praying to God or asking God for help. Intuition is God answering us back. God wants us to have a great life. And if we follow that guidance, that intuition, we always know it works. We always kick ourselves when we don't follow our intuition, right?
Right.
So that's God telling us how to live a great life, how to flow, how to stay away from things that are going to hurt us. Or, as I've learned, sometimes you get that bad feeling. It's not that place is bad, but you're meant to be somewhere else.
So how can you differentiate between the two?
First of all, practice listening to your intuition. And I say, your gut instinct. Okay. First thing I say to people is you thank it. Thank you, my intuition, for showing me. Even though you don't know, like you're meeting a person and you have the funny feeling about it, you don't know what it means, but you thank your intuition for showing me. And then it's like it leaves you because it's not, this is the thing, this is the trick. And this is what I didn't know as a child when I was so sensitive. When you thank your intuition for showing me and the energy leaves you, you know it wasn't yours. You were feeling the other person.
That's what you did with me.
That's right.
When we did our healing. You probably don't remember. You've probably done 600 people since then. But you said it wasn't yours to own, and that's why it dissipates.
Yes. And most people own it. They have a bad feeling and they take it personally. Instead of thinking, hang on, a minute ago, I was okay. And now I feel it. And the way I learned this, I think we talked about, I do spiritual work. I work with spirits as well to help get them freedom. I learned it through a spirit where I was in my front yard and suddenly I felt a spirit come close to me. And I'm like, I started to get afraid. I'm like, oh, what? And then my intuition said, were you afraid a minute ago? And I go, oh, no, I wasn't. And in that moment, I realized I was feeling the spirit's fear. It wasn't my fear. And this is back in 2000, or 1999, this opened this door for me to want to help spirits as well as people. And when
you say spirit, what do you mean? Like, define
a ghost, a person who's passed over, but they're stuck. They're still stuck on the planet. They didn't go, like Hollywood say, going through the tunnel of life.
Purgatory, right? They call it purgatory.
It's a bit different.
Okay.
But it's probably worse if you're stuck here, you can't move. It's
true. True.
And you're just wandering around lost.
So I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you're a devout Christian. Is that right? Because I know you're talking about Jesus Christ.
Yep.
All right. So tell us your views on, do you believe in good and evil? Do you believe in the devil? Like the forces, right? Are they spirit? What are the spirit? Take us there.
Okay. So just like
whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, sure. Just like there's good and bad people, right? There's good and bad spirits. And so, and there's different levels.
There are evil people, right?
Yes.
Right. No, some people think there's no evil in the world.
And most of those evil people are run by evil spirits. They're being controlled and manipulated by evil spirits. It's not always, sometimes it is, it's directly the person who does it, and then they recruit evil spirits to work, to hurt people. And others, it's just they are just being manipulated by bad spirits. I wouldn't say evil.
Okay, so we're not going to get into politics. We're not going to get into politics, but we're having this podcast now when Russia invaded Ukraine, right? I think we can all agree Zelensky, the president of Russia, is a leader extraordinaire. Putin is evil, correct?
I don't know.
Well, he's not a
my intuition said to not listen to the media and to pray for peace and harmony and just put all my energy, focus my energy into resolving the situation. Because I can't change anything on the personal level. I can't go, I can go over there and fight, I guess. But it's like I can't really do anything. I can't go and talk to Putin and slap some sense in him or whatever. So what can I do? I say, God, what can I do with this situation? I can see how all my clients or all the people are so stressed with the situation. How can I, and this has been my mantra since the beginning, how may I serve? And then God tells me what to do. So I do it. And I'd say, God, you got to pray for peace and start bringing good feelings amongst the people so they can keep going forward. Otherwise, people start going to this soup, I call it, of stress and frustration and terror and everything. It's like all these the mind starts manifesting these crazy ideas and thoughts and dreams and so forth. So that's what I do.
Is the prayer a form of energy? Like when you pray, are you putting positive spirits out there?
Yes.
Okay, you're 100%. Looking at me a funny way. Did I say it wrong?
No, 100%. Because are we going to fill the world with all this stress, or are we going to fill it with love? Or fill the world with all this fear, or we're going to fill it with love? And who was it? Gandhi said, I think it was Gandhi, be
the change you want to see in the world.
In the world, yeah. So and I know when you have one person who's emanating love, no matter how much stress you have around you, it starts to dissolve.
It's contagious.
Exactly. And so that was my guidance and direction through this situation. There's always been wars. I lived in Europe. I just walk down the street. I can feel the history on the land. I can feel the pain. Even in Virginia, I could feel the from the Civil War. I mean, it's like there's pockets on the planet that have this energy, and when people are weak in this energy, they get influenced by this same energy, and they start acting out.
I have to ask you, because you surprised me on your answer with Putin. And of course, I don't know. I assume you never met Hitler. Is he evil? Was he evil?
That's a good question. I would say he was definitely, you could say, messed up. But
boy, are you
I don't know how.
kind.
But you look at, I mean, really, what if someone has that consciousness to do that to humanity? I mean, there's something wrong. Because, and I know that because of my work, if someone feels love in their heart, they can't even think of hurting anyone else. It doesn't exist.
So help me understand why you hesitate, or it just is not palatable for you to say, yes, Hitler is evil. You're not saying he's a good guy, but there's something that, right? No,
he's
I understand
not a
that.
good guy. Yeah.
But I would have thought when I asked that question, you'd be like, oh, absolutely. Great example. And you're like, interesting question. And I'm like, interesting.
Because I've never looked at it.
I thought that was a softball question.
Because I haven't looked at it. And I haven't checked in with
the history.
I know the history, right? But I always check my heart.
All right, do me a favor. I want you to check on Hitler and get back to me. See, no.
All right.
Seriously, because you can feel that, right?
Yeah, but if I go there, then it's going to be it's like you're attracting it back to me, and I'd rather be spending my time. I would prefer not to. I would prefer to put more love into the world than hate.
Okay.
But the atrocities, I know when I was clearing in Europe, the amount of spirits I had to clear out of cellars, and that people were hiding from the whole war was so sad. So sad.
Holocaust. That's what it was.
Yeah. So sad.
So you would feel that in cellars and attics of people that were hiding.
Yeah. And people who died there. Because they would die, or I'd either feel the energy or I'd feel a spirit of the person who died in that space, and I'd help them to move on because they were stuck, they couldn't move. So and the emotional energy.
When you free the person of the spirit, have you also freed the spirit to move on?
Yes, that's what I do. So I want to help the spirit to the light, to God, to heaven, whatever you want to call it, whatever they get off the planet to go where they're meant to be going. They're not stuck here anymore.
Okay.
There are some spirits, the bad ones, the evil ones, who don't like the light. They actually love the darkness. And that's the ones who probably ran Hitler's regime.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a normal human would not do those sort of things. It's a lot of times it's spiritually
believing in the good of humanity.
Yes. Well, I do believe in it.
Right.
Because even bad people look after their family. They love their family. So it's got to be there, right?
Right. There's that disconnect. Like if you think of the mafia,
yes.
Right? Yeah. You don't touch the family because it's the family, but it's okay for me to kill yours.
Yeah.
Right. So help us understand from your area of expertise, one of the several that you have, the many that you have, what is contributing to the, I'll use the word chaos, but you might have a better word, to the chaos of the world today. And I don't just mean COVID, right? I mean, we know that didn't help, but everything seems to feel unsettled. Or it feels unsettled to me. My clients feel unsettled. Parents feel unsettled. Business owners feel unsettled. And not just the thrill of the unknown. like not that challenge, but a discomfort of unsettled and almost like going into quicksand. Can't get out of it. What is your view on that, or do you think it's different?
So people who, where you focus your thoughts, where you focus your energy directs your life. And if you're tired, you're going to be influenced by the outside to focus your thoughts in a certain direction, right? When you're not fully loving yourself and having that expression of love in yourself, you're easily influenced. It's happened to me many times in my life when I've been exhausted, tired, I get sucked into whatever the mainstream is saying. So, and I really noticed this in the early days of COVID, when I would go into a house and I'd see all this dark energy. I'm like, oh, okay, so I say, okay, I've got to clear the house. So I clear the house. Next day, it'd be back again. And I'm like, I just cleared this yesterday. That's impossible. It's never happened to me before.
It's like how I used to clean my kitchen when I was raising my kids. I'd clean it, I'd turn around, it's dirty again. Like, I just cleaned up this mess.
So they were coming. Exactly. So an external energy was coming in and messing up your kitchen.
Exactly.
Right?
That was easy. Right? We knew that those were the little rugrats. We knew exactly who those spirits were.
All right. But the energy was, the darkness I saw wasn't spirit. It was something else that I didn't know. And so what I did was I prayed to God, okay, God, how may I serve? How can I help this home so that they stay clear? And then God showed me what to do. I had to do this special blessing on a candle that would burn. And as it burnt, it would suck all this darkness into the candle. It would just like it clean the house. It was like, oh, this is so cool. All right. So they would do it anyway. What we did, we found out the energy was coming through the media, through the social media, through the TV. It was coming into the house and filling the house. Now, if you're sitting in this dark energy, your thoughts are going to be influenced by the stress of what's being projected. And I was like, wow, this is how much influence when you're vulnerable, you can be swayed in different directions. And so that was my learning. And so getting back to your question, it's like, where do you put your energy and focus? What do you want to achieve today? How may I have a great day today? You know, how can I improve my day today? What can I do? And like you start putting your energy in that direction, you're going to start to, it's like attracts like. You start to attract that to you. And it's like the more and more people that do this, it's that, you know, what'd you say before? It was like, it sort of rubs off on other people. It's sort of...
it's contagious.
Contagious. Yeah.
Right.
And so that was the deal. But when you've got such an onslaught, I mean, this is a global situation.
Sure.
It's not just one state or one city or one country.
Which is why it's so scary.
Well, is it? Or is it that it's just the multiplication of the thoughts of fear that makes it so bad? Because when I would go in these houses that had the candles afterwards, they were like, oh, we're so relaxed. It's like, oh, okay, it works. You know, they had peace and harmony in the house. And that was sort of like manifesting or expanding or becoming contagious. So, and those people are really healthy, happy, you know, and so forth. So that's one example.
It's interesting that you're saying that, only from the perspective of very pedestrian perspective. When we just sold our house and there was a lot of windows, but people would come in all the time and say, oh my gosh. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we were Donna Reed or a perfect family, but they were like, oh my God, there's such positive energy in this house. And I'm like, really? You had no idea what was going on here. Who's coming and going? The dog is barking. Who's throwing up? Who's yelling? Blah, 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 blah. But they said, no, it just feels like you created a happy life here. And so I understand. And other times you go into people's houses and you're like, it just feels dark.
Yes.
And you're like, all right, out of here, out of here. But you're doing this interview very kindly for me from Chicago, because you're at Dan Sullivan's strategic coach event. And isn't a coach, sorry. And doesn't Dan say something like, your mind only sees
and your ears only hear, your brain, your eyes only see, your ears only hear what your brain is looking for.
Right. And that's exactly what you're saying.
Yes. And it's true. So An example, like what you said, why would people say that about your house when you know the history? Because the land under the house could be influencing the energy of the house.
No,
Okay,
no, it was a happy house. It was happy.
and the other thing is, like a great example, I had this couple call me to clean their house because they were having marital problems, and I walked in, and as soon as I walked into the house, I just immediately said, I felt separation energy in the house, and I said, "Are you guys sleeping in separate rooms?" And they said, "No." I'm like, God, the energy is so strong for separation. Anyway, we talked about it, and what happened was they know it wasn't them, because when they left the house to go out, they were happy again. They were like their normal relationship. But when they came home, they were always fighting. So we did the clearing, and then they said, well, now we feel harmony in our home. Okay, we feel the peace and love. So we did some research on the property, and we found that there had been a bad divorce, like in the past, and every couple that moved in afterwards separated. The energy was still in the property, and it was causing separations. And they had such a loving relationship, they knew something was wrong with the house, not with them, because they'd go away from the house and they'd be happy. Right. They'd come. It was a beautiful home, right? But the energy there was causing separation.
And you wouldn't feel that when you walk into it, like what I said earlier, people will walk into my home like, oh my God, there's such great energy in here. You wouldn't feel a negative energy?
Like me or anyone?
And no, not you.
No, anyone. You look at the house, it's beautiful. And probably all the couples that came in before them, that thought it was beautiful as well. But then the energy of the house started to influence their thoughts, their sleep, their interactions, and so forth. It just accumulated.
Okay, so I'm gonna get global on you now. You just made me think of something.
All right.
So if a structure has an energy history, and if it's left unattended, it just grows, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Correct. So it becomes more powerful. Is that the right way to say it?
It accumulates, like dust collects in a corner.
Okay.
Then it attracts more dust and more dust and more, and pretty soon you've got a whole dust pit. Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing.
Does that
it can accumulate good energy, or it can accumulate bad energy. It's just like attracts like.
Right. So does that happen to countries?
Sure.
How so?
It happens in the. I'll give you an example. When I was in Los Angeles in '91 during the riots, there was one.
I was just thinking that.
So I was in one suburb, and there was no damage. I walked down the road, and there was this one road that separated two suburbs, and one was completely destroyed. Like you walk down the road, everything, all the windows are smashed, and there's stuff all over. The other side of the road, nothing. Now that's the consciousness. So the consciousness on one side of the street was propelling the negative on the other side of the street. So it actually kept the space clear. There was no guards or no protection. It was just the consciousness that was protecting. And so when you go to countries, especially like Europe, where there's so much history on that land of all the wars and everything, it has an influence on the people. Okay, and then you go to like the States, the US, and it's like you go to parts of the US and you just feel like free because there hasn't been any wars.
And also the borders, like in Europe, it's so permeable. So the energy is flowing. Is that it?
I remember my first experience of that, because I grew up in Australia, which is just one, and the US is also one big country, right?
Yeah.
So I remember once I was on a train with a friend, and suddenly I said, oh my God, the energy just changed. I said, what happened? He goes, oh, we just crossed the border into Germany. And there was a distinct energy difference between the two. Another time I went to where they had still a little piece of the old Iron Curtain, the wall separating Austria from Czech Republic. And I would crawl under the wire just to, do the pretend to escape. And I could feel the difference. It's one field, but I could feel the difference on one side to the other. And I thought, this is amazing how this simple fence can have such an impact on consciousness from one side. It's not nature. It's got to be human. Okay. Human impact. And so when I'm doing a clearing on a property, I make sure I seal the property so that when you step on your property, you feel like you're heading into your castle. You feel safe. You feel secure. And you step back off the property and you feel all the dramas of life. So making the space where you come home, you recharge, replenish all your energies, so you can go back out and deal with the world. And
So
that's my
how do you seal the property? Do an energy seal?
It's a special healing where you're adjusting the magnetic grid on the property. You know, the earth has a lot of magnetic lines. Adjusting the magnetic grid, and a big part of my prayer, my biggest belief with God, I guess, is freedom of choice. So we all have freedom of choice.
Free will.
Okay.
Free will.
All right. It's free will. So my rule when I'm doing the prayer is that nothing outside these property lines be influenced, because they didn't ask for it. Those people living next door didn't ask for this.
Mm-hmm.
So which is great when you have bad neighbors, because I seal the property and then suddenly they can still be bad, but it don't influence you.
Right.
It's pretty cool. So that's so it's my putting that part into it, honoring God's gift for us of freedom of choice, free will, that I'm not interfering with someone else's reality.
So this is one of the reasons why, parents care so deeply about whom their children hang out with.
Exactly. Yeah, because they're vulnerable. Kids are vulnerable, and the parents can't control them 24/7, and so they're worried. And it's not a mental thing. It's like a deep rooted knowing in your heart what's good and not good.
Well, and also for adults, if you hang out with adults that drink every night, odds are eventually you will hang out and drink every night. And if you, so it, what is it? You're the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
That's consistent throughout life, right?
Yes, 100%.
So there's so many other areas that I'm just fascinated. So what have we touched on or what we haven't touched on that you'd really like to go deeper into? Because I could have you on for 5 hours. I'll let you have a bathroom break.
Thank you. This whole thing about relationships. I got a calling to start to work with men to help them bring them back to the masculinity. And then I've been praying for a couple of years to do a women's workshop, and God finally gave me permission this year. I was like, finally, I've been wanting to, because I help women individually.
You weren't ready for us.
That's right.
You can tackle men. We're a whole different ball of wax.
As a group, because I could do it individually, and I've had so much success with women with relationships and how to trust the intuition.
What have you experienced? I know you said it's only been a year with the women's groups, but you're a guy. You've been dealing with women your whole life, by hook or by crook. What do you notice has been the biggest difference, challenge, obstacles, the good, the bad, and the ugly between working with the men and the women?
100%. It's closed heart with the women. If a woman's heart is closed with the women, if the woman's heart is closed, she's surviving with her mind. She's not in her authentic power, her authentic truth, her feminine power.
Of trauma, or
it can be trauma, it can be conditioning, it could be society, it could be. There's so many different possibilities. I remember when I was working in China. Interesting. When I was in China, most of my clients were Japanese women, and they are totally shut down. And as soon as they opened their heart, it was like, because when your heart is open, especially with women, you start glowing, like your energy starts flowing out, because that's your power. Your strength is in your softness, in your heart. So having that energy come out, it's your big magnetism. It's your electromagnet, right? Your heart is just beautiful. If you want something, you can manifest it. And I know I watch it when I do the balance with the masculine and feminine with women, how many guys will rush to help the woman because they're being nourished by the feminine energy. But if a woman is trying to be a man or trying to protect herself or close her heart, then there's no respect from the men with the women. They lose their dignity. There's so many things that happen as a result.
What do you mean but when you say when a woman's trying to be a man? I know what that means from a business sense, but tell us more about that.
Just like you said, trying to be a man instead of being themselves. Now, you still need to have,
show up? How does
or
that
in
show
business, like you said, in
up?
business,
Okay.
or like I had a client yesterday, beautiful woman, and she said she called me because she had issues with relationships. And when I was getting ready for the call and I pressed, I was shocked because I was expecting a man. When I was preparing for the session, I could feel this masculine energy. And then I looked, oh, there's this woman there. I thought it was a man I was working with, right? And I was like, oh, you're beautiful looking, but the feeling you're putting out is masculine. All right. So if you're trying to have a relationship with a man, it's two men butting heads. It ain't going to happen. Right.
Two alpha dogs.
Yeah. So when the woman gives the world her feminine power, her energy, her creativity, then everyone comes to serve her. But when her heart is closed, it's like they don't even know she exists.
All right, so I have such a mundane thought as you said that. A gentleman opens a door and holds a door for a woman, right? It's not chauvinistic. It doesn't mean the woman can't do it, but it's being a gentleman, right? It's part of what you're saying, reaching out to a woman.
But when a woman puts out that energy, the men can't even control themselves. They have to serve her.
Right. So what is happening today where that's such a big deal? You know, you'll open up a door for a woman and she'll be like, I can get it. Like I've seen that. And I'm like, of course you can. I think to myself, of course you can. You don't, as my mother would say, you don't have two broken arms, but what's the threat to your person, to your energy by someone?
I think it's just conditioning. You know, the world, women had been suppressed for so long. And then they went through this is just my perspective, like the women's revolution in the 60s. And then they started teaching their kids the same thing, and the boys, their sons and so forth. And so now when the men are trying to come back, there's too much conditioning. So there's going to be a transition, like the pendulum is swinging a different way. Okay.
You're sounding a little bit like a dinosaur.
So when I used to go on dates, if a woman wouldn't let me open the door, I knew it was over. There was no chance of me having a relationship because I love to serve.
I mean, honestly, I say that, you know, lovingly about the dinosaur, meaning like the 60s. Like, I feel like, you know, we have to, sometimes it had to happen. It had to happen. To get society's attention, right?
Exactly.
You have to have the extreme. Quite frankly, I don't care if you wear a bra or not. Like, you know, really, who cares on some level, right? As long as their respect. And the pendulum does shift. How is the shifting impact the energy, right? So it feels as if, and I understand what you're saying about light goes to light, but it feels harder to find the light. It from a society, like this person is, you know the person that, oh my gosh, it's a beautiful day. You know, it's going to rain in 2 days. I'm like, yeah, but it's a beautiful day out today, right? Like, and
today, yeah.
It just seems as if, and I don't know, is it the social media? Is it the 24/7 sensational? You know, if it's not bad news, it's not news. Or is it the same? It's just there's more.
It comes back to what I said before. Where is your focus?
Mm-hmm.
What are you focused on? Because what you focus on will manifest, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where you, like Dan says, where your eyes only see and your ears only hear what your brain's looking for. So where are you focused? And this is why I started working with men, because I could see this problem. And I said, the guys need to be men so the women feel safe so they can really shine in their own giving of the love, you know, because woman is around a man. She can be a man outside of the relationship, right, to protect herself. But when she comes back to the relationship, she wants to be a full woman and she wants the man to protect her energetically. I'm not talking about, you know, she could be making more money than him, doesn't matter. Nope. It's an energetic transfer where there's harmony, and that's what grows love. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, and I could never say who told me these things, but women incredibly successful women that I have worked with financially, right? They make a ton more money than their husbands, and they're okay with it. Like, it's not, on the one hand, it's not the issue, but on the other hand, what they will say to me, and only to me, knowing I will take it to my grave, is that, but you know what, Patty Ann, I'm tired. I would like my partner, my husband, to maybe be able to carry this load. So I feel like there's a little bit of a conflict, even for the women out there crushing it, if they do have to take on. So here's a question. If a woman has to be out in the world and have a persona of male, if you will, but it's not real, it's not really who they are, they know that, but they have to present in that way. Let's just say they're in private equity or investment banking, right? Otherwise, they'll be crushed. Can you do that? Can you spend a moment being other than who you are energetically?
Sure.
Knowing that it's not real, and then when you come back. So how does
that
work?
You come back and you transition back into your authentic self. Okay. Yeah. Just like guys who go, I'll use guys as an example, they go off to war or they go to work, then they come home. If they don't transition, they're going to destroy their home. Because that's the energy, right? So they need that transition time to let go, whether it's going for a run or sports or walk or just sitting reading the newspaper. And then they can say, oh, now I'm calmed down to the energy of the home. Now I can be with my family.
Right.
And if the women also learned that, it's like you need some sort of transition time, whether it's going to a spa or getting your nails done or something that transitions you. And it's like, oh, I feel better now. I'm back to me. And then some women can do it really fast. They have this gift where they can transition from masculine to feminine really fast because they're balanced in the masculine and feminine. But if they've pumped up their masculine so high and their feminine is left behind, it's going to cause that. It's very hard to transition. So we're going to work on bringing them equal. So inside, even though you're a woman, inside you still need that balance of the masculine and feminine.
Right. So it's so funny you say that. When my kids were little and I would go to work and I would drive home. So all four of them, I had them all close in age, like they'd come running to me and I'd be like, time out. And my ritual, it was my transition. I would have to go upstairs, change my clothes, go to the bathroom and come downstairs. And I was ready. Wasn't 5 minutes, but I needed to change my hat from professional to mommy. And then I was ready. I always found it quite bizarre. And then as they got older, I'd walk in the door. They're like, I need to talk to you as soon as you come downstairs. Something like that. It was interesting. What do you love about working with women that you so eagerly wanted to do it?
It's their intuition. They have such a good connection with their intuition. They don't always listen to it, but they have such a good connection with their they call it women's intuition, but it's the same.
Why? And why is it different than a man's?
Men are too mental, too much in the mind or too much in the physiology. Logic. They're not listening, the logic, they're not listening to that intuitive. The only ones that do are extremely successful when they're following their gut, they call it gut instinct for guys, right? But it's the same thing, right? It's like trusting your gut instinct and following through with what you feel. Then it's not a thinking, it's a knowing. And then everything flows. So women I love because when I'm working with a woman and we open her heart, it's like you get blown away with the love that pours out. They've been under this rock. And then the whole face changes. That I can feel, even on Zoom, I can feel it. It's so powerful. And it's like they're glowing. And it's like, now you can manifest your life. Now you can relax and enjoy and create and so forth. But that's the joy for me.
So let me ask a question. So it's if men will follow their gut, if they can put logic or reasoning behind it, right, in some way, and women will, they'll say we're more emotional, but we feel it. It's our instinct. Would you make the connection then that based upon vulnerability as well, that women then inherently are more trusting, so they will trust their feelings, where men are more not as trusting, so they want evidence? Is there any connection there?
Well, emotions and intuition are slightly different
Okay.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
Intuition is a knowing, whereas emotion is a feeling.
Right.
So, I mean, the language we use is a bit hard to differentiate.
No. I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
So, the man who listens to his gut instinct has the ability to slow down 1 second per minute just to sense it, whereas most guys are just rushing because they're leading with their head,
Right.
okay, or other things. So
It's like that. Go ahead.
so I mean, I know it myself. You know, if I don't slow
You're
down,
a guy.
it's like you don't slow down for a sec and just trust. Well, what is the truth? You're just going to do something stupid. You know, it's just the way we are. All right. So I remember when I worked with couples who were in like real estate brokers or real estate developers, and the ones that worked together in harmony were always successful, the man and the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, because it's the best combination. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the man would use his logic brain to look. I'd say get 5 properties, and then your wife can check them, and she will tell you yes, no, yes, no. It's like, and when they did that, it was always a winner. But when the man would override the woman's intuition, oh no, these numbers are better this way, they would always screw up or blow it because he missed an opportunity to work with a gift that's right there in his own home, you know? So that's when the combination is such beautiful harmony, when they work together. And then the man can be influenced to listen more to his gut instinct, which is helpful as well. So
it's so funny. What I say is it's, you know, the men and the male and the female, we complement each other. Right. And that's the beauty of it. It's not a completion, it's a complement of, right? So in sales, I think every sales team should be man, woman, because the man will get the analytics right, gross oversimplification, and the woman will get the nuanced, and she'll heal what's not being said, even if the guy's saying, yes, this is great, let's do it, we'll get back to you. The woman's like, I'm not so sure. I noticed something. And then, you know, because people don't always share their objection with you, right? You might have to quiet the objection before it's even spoken, type of thing. Right. So do you work with children, and do parents bring you in to help with their, how does that play out? Like, you know, ADHD.
I work from before birth all the way, and my oldest client was 105. So all ages. With children, ADHD, I remember one child that shocked me because they knew.
I can't imagine anything shocking you, so I'm so curious.
This was a long time ago. And the parents brought him in because of his problems with school, and they were concerned about putting him on Ritalin and, you know, drugging him and so forth. And then I checked and I said, he's doing this on purpose. And I said, do you know what you're doing? He goes, yeah. He was using other kids' energy. He was collecting their energy to get what he wanted. And I'm like, so being sensitive and absorbing and taking all their energy so he could use it somewhere else. But that's not really healthy, right? Because he wasn't using any of his own energy. And so I'm like, oh, this is what's going on. So the reason he was bouncing around was because he had too much energy, because he'd been taking it from other kids. So this is one extreme case. So when you learn the kids to develop their own energy, they calm down. Because it's a bit like the hope and the heart for the women, the energy starts to come out instead of absorbing in. Right. And so the other kids, sometimes it's a chemical imbalance. Sometimes they're just sensitive. You know, that the whole thing about they're feeling someone else's and taking it personally. Like they're not thanking their intuition for showing them what's going on with the other person.
Since boys still can't really be sensitive, they are more diagnosed with the ADHD, perhaps inappropriately, than girls, because girls are allowed to be more sensitive.
Yeah. So, and also there's a lot of kids that have a gift with that sensitivity, but it's not, of course, our society doesn't accept that as a gift. Just like, so 30 years ago, I actually asked myself this question, what if this weakness, this sensitivity, is actually a strength? And when I asked that question, my whole life changed. Everything transformed, and I started to attract the right teachers and everything to support me to grow this gift instead of try to suppress it.
Interesting. How do you think I just find it so interesting that having been an athlete, a high level athlete, helped you develop who all these skills, because athletes are so in tune with their body.
Mm-hmm.
Like good athletes, right? You're tuned into what you eat, how you sleep. You talk about you did all the appropriate training, and yet you'd go be in a hotel room before an event, and all of that went out the window, and you knew it wasn't all the prep work that you did. But I would imagine there's more of a connection. So just let us hear a little bit more about that.
So that's when I started to ask the question, well, why is this hotel room affecting my performance? Why when everything else is so controlled in my preparation, I go to this hotel room and I run exhausted, and I go to this other hotel room and I run fantastic. Mm-hmm. So why should our environment influence us? And of course, I've learned a lot since then. That was before I started my work. But it's like that was the big question I wanted to answer. And so I had great questions that drove me forward. That my passion for improving performance, improving human abilities is so strong in my life that's what's driven me with this work. How can I help someone get better? How can I improve their lives? How can, it's always this, how can I help them here? It's just so, and so this passion for getting someone to a new level of growth or stability or happiness or joy or spirituality, whatever it is, I'm always looking, God, how can I help them? Mm-hmm. And I always go to God because it's so much easier than trying to read books. So, because God will give you the answer for that particular person, not a general answer.
So, how can you help someone, or would you have been able to have developed the skills you developed if you were not a believer in God?
I would say I wouldn't be able to get the results I get without it. Believing in God, when I look at my clients who believe in God and my clients who don't believe in God, okay, what I noticed, I was like looking at what's the patterns, because I know it was always harder with people who didn't believe in God because there was a resistance. And I didn't know what the resistance was for years. I just kept, I would get exhausted trying to help them. And then what I found later was the belief in God allowed you to be able to ask for help outside of yourself. So they didn't have that belief in God. They didn't know how to ask for help outside of themselves because they thought they had to do everything themselves. Mm-hmm. And even though they might have teams in their companies or whatever, the communication wasn't there because they didn't have this ability to ask outside of themselves for help. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the big part. When someone comes in with this energy of asking for ability to ask for help, they receive so much more. Asking, mm-hmm. you shall receive, the whole and mm-hmm. so forth. Mm-hmm. And when someone has the ability not to ask for help, it's like you're fighting against the wall.
And what
so
about
that's where I know.
What about an atheist? What about the person sitting on the fence? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Depends upon the day. If
well, it's funny because
they believe.
Yeah, right. Sometimes I'll ask the client, do you believe in God? And they say no. And I'm like, huh? Because I can feel God with them. I can feel the love with them. I know God's there. But they were just, the word God was a bit distorted in their consciousness. So it wasn't, maybe it was religion or maybe it was upbringing or whatever. But God is, I can feel the love near them. And they have so much history in their life of positive experiences. So they have God with them. They just don't have the relationship. They don't have the talking and the connection. Mm-hmm. And so just by telling them that, and they go, oh, yeah, this happened. So then they start remembering all the things that made them relate to that. They just didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. So it's just so it can be that as well. An atheist who doesn't believe in God, I have one person who is a complete atheist, and I just love his work. It's funny because he's doing a lot for humanity, but he's not. He doesn't believe in God at all. It's I don't know. Anyway, so having a relationship with God.
Hang on, Kim. Do you think that on some level that person does believe in God, maybe not in the Word of God, but it's just not in their consciousness?
I believe every soul knows God. It's just how covered up that relationship is with lifetimes of trauma or whatever, stress and activities. That's what blocks. Just like a woman with a closed heart where there's a rock over her heart and she can't communicate herself. As soon as the rock is dissolved, it's like everything flows. So everyone has it inside, has the love inside. They just need to let it come out of them.
So what have you seen as the most powerful relationships that you've helped women with?
Ask a bit more clarity on that.
Yeah, that wasn't clear. You love working with women, right? What relationships do you heal the most, that become the most powerful for them?
I would say it's same, opening the heart.
So themselves.
Yes. Loving themselves and forgiving themselves is huge. Some of them don't even realize they don't until I ask them to say it. And it's like, I can't say it. Now, sometimes it's genetic. It's not even them. So they have nothing in, it's just ancestral. So they have nothing.
Genetic or familiar? Like in the genes?
Genetic. Like it's been passed down generation after generation. That they don't even, it's like the story of the why does the woman cut the ends of the pan, right? Because her grandma had a small oven. She doesn't know.
That's a great story. Yeah.
Right. So it's the same thing. Like even my story, my great-great-grandfather with the muscles, the transitioning from Ireland to Australia, and it was passed down through the generations. Now, knowing that, I can see how it was passed down through my lineage. Same thing. So sometimes it comes from the womb. The mother's carrying the baby, and she's so stressed that it goes into the baby, and it shuts the baby's heart. And so the baby all her life growing up has just got a closed heart and doesn't know. She has no idea. It's nothing to do with her, but she's been carrying it. And so be able to go in there and remove it.
From her mother? Did the mother get it from her?
She can, or she had an experience while she was pregnant that she passed on to the baby. So going in and removing that blockage from the woman, it's like, and sometimes I get pushed. I can feel a pushback, like, like there's a strong breeze coming at you, because the heart opens and it just hits me. And it's this love feeling. And then the woman starts crying. She goes, why am I crying? I say, because your heart just opened. Your energy is flowing. You're free. You're finally free again.
So what is that like for you? I mean, you just described that and it felt like, gosh, who wouldn't want to be you in those moments?
Oh, it's amazing. That's why I love my work. I can do the same thing for 20 years, exactly the same healing. It's so much joy because I get hit with this love every time from these women. It's just beautiful. I mean, that's the way the world should be. If there was more love in the world, right, it would be a different world. So
do you think there was a time when the day-to-day living wasn't as complicated? Like when we were working on the farm, even though you were working very hard, right? Do you think there was a time when there was a simplicity to life, that people were more in touch with themselves and the love?
Yeah. I would say in the early days of work, I had a lot of farmers, and I could tell the difference between the farmers and the city dwellers. And it was just, there was more grounding with the farmers and more relationship with the earth. Yeah. Whereas the city dwellers are being influenced by so much energy around them. Like when I'm in New York, I mean, I got to get out after a while because it's too intense for me. But it's just energy, just a lot of people together.
In the world. It's my favorite city in the world. So actually, let me ask you about that. So, fast-paced New York, right? You can make it there. You can make it everywhere. It's clearly not for everyone. I just had a visual as you were speaking. Like, okay, so my husband and I are watching Yellowstone. Do you watch Yellowstone?
No.
Is it Netflix?
I've heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like in Montana. It's like, cattle and farmers. And the scene we watched last night was just cattle. It was just gorgeous, right? Even a city person can appreciate it.
Mhm.
And yet, when you contrast that to New York, and I'm picturing myself leaving Grand Central Station, the subway that takes you from the suburbs to
Yep.
New York, and I'm literally feeling the tall skyscrapers.
Yes.
Right? Is that an energy that constricts? Like, is that
Yes.
what you're?
Yes.
So even if
Because
you go into that and you're not looking for it,
it affects you. It affects everyone because you've got compression. You've got energy compression. So what does the body naturally do? It protects itself. So it starts to close down. And then people get really hard because they're closed down. When people are open, they're more loving. It's easier. When I lived in Hong Kong, it was like I love Hong Kong. It's an amazing city, but I had to fly out of Hong Kong to go and relax because it was so intense, the city, and it's very different in New York.
I was just going to say, wait a minute, you could love Hong Kong and not New York?
No, I love New York, but I couldn't live there.
Oh, okay.
I can't spend much time there. And there's also a lot of history on the land of New York, a lot of things that have happened over the centuries. So,
you mean like revolutionary stuff or even more?
Yeah, and just all the battles, the warfare on the land. There's so much has happened on that land there. And just the concentration of human energy in one space. There's no space to breathe. Okay? So you get the New York. New York, I know, you go there just before Christmas when it's starting snowing, it's like the whole city changes. It's like, what? Even though people are stressed, there's a calmness. Something is happening with the energy and the consciousness in the city, and then it's back to normal after that.
Yeah, New Yorkers would say it's magical to spend Christmas in New York. That's what we say.
Yeah, because it is. It's a lot calmer than normal.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'd always live I'd stay in Jersey and come across to do work in New York.
Is there any correlation between somebody's chosen, or let me say it differently. What is the correlation between the profession someone chooses and their energy?
Okay, if they choose their profession with their heart or their soul, everything flows.
Mm-hmm.
If they just choose a profession because of external influences, family, friends, college, whatever, then or environmental conditions, they have to, then it's going to be harder. That's the correlation. So when you're doing what you love, everything flows, right? You're just so happy, and then you give that to the world. But when you're doing something you don't like, it's like, it's a grind. And then everyone else is stupid around you, because you're exhausted. So that's the correlation. The more you do what you love, and I work with a lot of clients to help them to get in touch with what's their truth, what can they give to the world, what's their gift that they can share. Like Dan talks about the unique ability. What's your unique ability to contribute to the world? Life is great, and you need to build the team around you to support that, and they're doing all what they're really good at. And then just
I actually call it's energizing. When you do what you love, it feels like it's energizing.
Yeah.
So everybody has the same amount of energy. It's just how it's used or manifested.
Yeah. It's just energy. So how you use it, energy. Okay, energy is one thing. Spirit is another. So your soul, what your spirit is wanting to do or give, your energy, you start to create energy instead of doing a job where you're just using up energy and getting exhausted. When you're creating energy, you're giving to the planet through your actions.
So what happens to the energy and the spirit when you die if you don't get stuck?
Depending on your soul's journey, You'll go wherever you need to go. Your spirit leaves your body. And what have you seen that CBS show, Ghosts?
No, I haven't.
It's absolutely hilarious. I love it. But
CBS?
It's CBS. I just saw it a few weeks ago. And basically the spirit just leaves the body and goes to where it's meant to be, right? It's not stuck on the planet. Whereas the other ghosts, the ghosts in the house are stuck. They didn't get to go. Okay.
So do you believe in a form of reincarnation?
Uh-huh.
So how does that play out?
Your soul has many lifetime experiences on the planet, like 400 or 500. And so you'll come back and you'll have more and more experiences on the planet in different forms. And we carry the information in our soul. We don't remember because there's a gap between reincarnations of a few hundred years. So we start to forget consciously. But the soul remembers what's the truth and what you're here to do or not. So
you said before you're an old soul. Is that literal? Like, do you think you were, when you were a kid, you said you were an old soul? I
did. I don't think so. I don't know. But I think I've been around a few times. I've had an experience where I went to, when someone told me about a past life I had, so, hey, okay, let me check it out. I've got enough to deal with this life. I don't have to worry about past life. But I was in on holiday.
One life at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And I went to the south of France, and I went to this place, and I said, "Oh, this looks familiar," and but I'd never been there before. And then it was to the point where I was walking up a trail, and I said, "This doesn't feel right. It should be over here." And I look, and under the undergrowth, I can see an old trail. So I was like, "Oh my God, I have been here." Like I could feel where I had walked before, but I hadn't. Yeah, it's like deja vu. People saying, "Why just a deja vu?" It's because you're remembering something from a past life.
Right. Oh, right. Actually, I heard somewhere that neuroscience is amazing now, right? Things that we didn't realize that we thought, well, we can show neuroscience to, right? For example, a placebo effect of a drug. Well, if you tell someone it's a drug, the brain lights up as if it's the drug. So it works. It's fascinating. So what I'd heard was that intuition, we now think, is our generational history that consciously we don't know, but we've inherited or something. Is that anything similar to what you've said or totally different?
No. I would say that is true for the subconscious and how the subconscious affects our physiology, our body. But the intuition is direct from God. It's like having your computer, which has all the memory from all the generations there, but you can only access that information. But when you have the intuition, it's like connected to the internet, and suddenly you're connected to everything. So intuition is more the internet, whereas the that other stuff is just the conscious, subconscious, everything is, and the body is just in the computer. It's not connected to anything.
That's a great
Wi-Fi.
That's a great analogy. Yeah. All right. You've been so generous with your time. I only have 2 more questions, Kim.
Okay.
All right. Okay. The first one is, what is the most important thing you've learned in life that you want everyone to know?
I would say trust your intuition. And when you feel uncomfortable for no reason, say, thank you, my intuition, for showing me. And if it leaves you, you know it wasn't yours. If it's still there, you know it's yours. And you go deal with it. Okay. So that's what I would say.
That is great. And then what is the last book you reread?
Ooh.
Little twist there.
Yeah, I like it. One of my favorite books is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And why?
I like his writing. I like his writing style. There's something, that wasn't the last one. The last book I read was called How We Got to Now by, I think it was Stephen Johnson. Mm-hmm. And it's got 6 stories where it goes through all history of how we got to our present. Like one was glass. How do we use glass now? Where did it come from? One was cold, like air conditioning. How did it come from? Ice. How did it come from? And it's fascinating to me to see how humanity has evolved over centuries in directions, and how a new invention or a slight tweak of something can transform humanity, go in a different way. That fascinates me. So I like that. How we got to now.
And usually it's something, the new invention was accidental.
Yes.
That's fascinating as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So how can people find out, learn more about you? Because I know people are going to be checking you out.
So kimwhitecoaching.com is the website where I am. And if you go there, you can download a special technique called the cutting off technique, which is absolutely brilliant for any relationship, stress, trauma, whatever. When you have dealing with someone who's sucking your energy or draining you, you do this technique and then it's like instant gone. And it's funny when I teach it to my clients and they'll do it, and then they're having a great day, and then they get this phone call and it's like, oh, suddenly after 20 minutes they're exhausted, and they do the technique and suddenly they feel great again. The person calls back because they disconnect, because it's cutting the cord, disconnecting from the energy suckers. And awesome. So then you have more energy. And then one thing I say to people, sometimes it's all about energy balance, right? When someone has more energy than another, there's a transfer of energy. So sometimes when you have a friend who's sick in hospital, you want to go and support them, right? You want to give them energy because they need it. But then when you leave, you want to make sure you use the cutting off technique so that you can replenish your energy to go back the next day and give them more. But if you don't disconnect, you just being drained all 24/7.
Like pulling, like your plug, like your phone. You have to recharge it.
Yeah. And so just using this technique, people can download it straight from the website.
Oh, I'm going to check it out. I don't know how I don't know about it. Okay. Anything else you'd like to say before we conclude today's podcast interview?
Just I wish everybody all the best and trust your intuition, because God wants you to have a great life. And that's it. And open your heart to give that love to the world.
Great. And thank you so much for all the work
You're
you
welcome.
do for sharing all your love and helping people get a great life.
Thank
and
you
that
so much.
concludes today's podcast episode of The Trust Doctor, restoring trust and enriching significant relationships. And I am sure you would agree that Kim White did not disappoint. So make sure you go to his website, download that tool, and check him out for yourself or anybody else that you know he will be able to help. And before you go, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to the podcast. See you next time.
Once again, we've concluded another great episode of The Trust Doctor with Dr. Patty Ann. Tune in next week for more insights and advice on how you can create, nurture, and sustain healthy relationships. To find out more about the podcast, visit drpattyann.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share. Until next time.